Hi guys, welcome to QuiltAddictsAnonymous.com. As you can tell, we are making a bag today. It's going to be really fun. We have 4 different Tula Pink kits from her last line, Daydreamin', and it is super cute. I love how all of these turned out. They are fabulous for summertime, and they only took about 4 to 5 hours from start to finish. That includes your cutting, your fusing, your interfacing, and then putting it all together. And I was doing that while also filming. So it actually is going to be less time for you guys because it always takes me longer when I'm doing something on camera versus not. So we're going to take a peek at some of these bags, and then you guys are going to be able to go grab some kits. Tula kits never last long, so make sure you run on over and grab those. All right, so first we're going to take a look at this one, and I have forgotten all the names of these fabrics, and so we'll just have it on the scroll so you know what the name of the kit is, so you can grab that variation. But we have this really pretty green butterfly there for the background, a nice orange of her jaguar top, and then also we have this lovely ombre cloud fabric. And then this is fun because the lining is also that really bright orange. This bag is so fun too because we have an outside pocket that you can just slide things into. We've got a zippered pocket for when you want things to be a little bit more secured. And then in this big one, it's pretty big. I mean, you could get a good book in here if you've got, you know, something that you need to just sit and wait at for a little bit. You can definitely get that in there. And then we also have an inner zipper pocket here for things that you, again, want to keep even more secure. So this is really great. And it's just going to, you know, sling over your body. It's got the adjustable strap, so you can just make that fit wherever you need it to. So really great pattern. All right, so this one is pretty much the reverse of the one we just looked at. Instead of the green bottom and the orange top, we instead have an orange back butterfly with the green jaguar up top, and then we have, and that also is the lining, and then we have the orange ombre up here. And this one's fun because we have a nice black zipper tape for it, and it coordinates really beautifully with the black on the butterflies. It just looks really good. All right, next up we have our macaw print. This one's really pretty too. It's absolutely gorgeous. We've got the macaw on the outside, and then this fun little rainbow sun for our top and our lining, and a nice little fruit print. So this one to me just really screams summer. And this one has the white zipper tape throughout, so it's really nice bright ensemble. Perfect if you're going on vacation, I think. If you're going somewhere warm and tropical, this is the bag to bring with you. And this is the bag that we're going to be making on camera. We have a very large butterfly print that we're having on there. I took extra time to make sure I fussy cut mine so it'd be straight down the center. And then I love this pink and purple ombre for the strap. Oh, it's just so pretty. And then we still have that jaguar for the lining, and it just is rainbow on the inside. It's so fun, so pretty. I think it just looks fantastic. And I love how I did not plan this, but this was all the lining, and this part was all cut from the same width of fabric. And I didn't plan it to have the more blue-green up top, but man, does that look good. Although I feel like it would also look good with the purple because there's just, Tula's so great about incorporating color. And it's so fun, so great. So that's enough of me saying how great this bag is. I've said a lot of greats in the last minute, but I really like it. My daughter has already claimed this one. She's a huge fan of butterflies, and with that adjustable strap, I think it's going to work just fine for her as a crossbody. And so I've got to go press this, take some photos, and then she gets to stash it up with all of her goodies. It's probably going to be some Pokemon books to take with when we go on vacation. All right, so let's get into the tutorial. So the very first thing you want to do is read your pattern through thoroughly. There is going to be ways that you would maybe do things that the pattern is going to tell you to do differently, and I guarantee you Jessica has a very good reason for why she has said to do things a certain way. So make sure you read through every step, maybe watch this video before you get going as well, so that way you know what's up and what's coming. The other thing you want to do is make sure you cut all of your pieces ahead of time. Make sure you're paying attention to the width and the height on the pieces, especially if you have directional fabric, which we do in this case. I filmed while I was cutting my pieces, and I'll tell you right now, the thing that will set you apart as a bag maker for handmade bags is if you are, especially if you have like these butterflies for fussy cutting them, If you take your time and get it so those butterflies are centered, then you are going to set yourself apart from everybody else who just haphazardly cuts stuff. And sometimes when you're doing this, if you get a kit from us, we'll have included extra fabric for you for this purpose, but you may need to get a little bit extra so you've got enough room. We definitely did need a little extra with these butterflies, but that is the easiest way to level up your bag making, is to take a little bit of extra time and care when you're at the cutting stage to make sure everything that is going up is supposed to be up and centered as well as you can be. And then also, like, I paid attention to where is my zipper going to be when I was cutting butterflies, so that way I wasn't going to have a zipper going straight through a butterfly, but I wanted it centered above it. So those are all things that you want to pay attention to when you are cutting your fabric for your bag. The other thing I do when I'm cutting is I take a blank sheet of address labels and I will label each and every piece with the piece name that it is, and then I'll put the interfacing with it. That way I know what's supposed to go where and there are no surprises in the end. Now, when I told you read the pattern first, it's because there's a very good reason. When we were doing our samples for this, one of our sample makers put all the interfacing on the straps first and then sewed it together, but that's not what you're supposed to do in this case. The very first step is going to be to sew these two strips together, and then we're actually going to overlap that interfacing. That way when we're putting everything together in the end, it's going to coordinate very well and you're not going to have a hump that's going over that adjustable strap. All right, so like I said, we're going to start by sewing our straps together. We're using a 1/4 inch seam for this. All right, so now I'm just going to press that seam open. It'll help reduce bulk, and I like pressing my seams open in general. Now it's time to get going on that interfacing. One of the other things the directions will tell you is we want to leave these bottom 2 inches free of interfacing. That's so it's easier to fold over when we're putting it on our handle. And we're going to leave that free. So whenever we're applying interfacing, we want to make sure that the glue or shiny side is up, and then we're going to put our fabric on top of that. That's because it's a whole lot easier to get it unstuck from your ironing surface than it is to get it unstuck from your iron. So always do that. All right, so I'm going to eyeball 2 inches here. It's about 2 knuckle the thumb width, so I think we're good there. And I'm just going to make my way down. You can see I've got it inside just a little there. Now make sure you're reading the instructions for your interfacing. For this one, you mostly just have to hold over it for a couple of seconds, and I'm just working my way down, making sure everything is nice and evenly lined up with the interfacing below. I did have a little bit of trouble with this interfacing this time. I think maybe because it's summertime and it's humid, sometimes you just have to work a little bit harder at things, but I found it worked best if I was going from one entire direction to another rather than going kind of back and forth like I normally do. That did not work so well. All right, so I've got the first section fused down. We're going to now come down. All right, so I've made it to the end of my interfacing, but obviously not to the end of my fabric. So this is where we're going to overlap it slightly. And you can see my interfacing is a little wrinkly here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of straighten that out as we go. I'm overlapping that by about 1 inch or so here. And I'm going to flip it so that the right side is up. And now I'm just going to work my way down like I was before, smoothing out any wrinkles as you go. Obviously, you do not want to iron fusible interfacing before you fuse it. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. It's not going to fuse to anything, as you will have activated that glue. But to do it this way, it totally works. See, we've got nice and flat. And one thing I will tell you, especially if you have something that's giving you a little trouble, like mine was a little bit when I was working with the samples yesterday, you want to have the hottest iron you can. I really love the Elisa. We do not sell these, so I'm not making any money from that. I just really love the iron. And I also really love this wool pressing mat because it kind of reflects the heat back. It kind of holds it in, and you're able to get a really, really good press. And I really love that about this. This is another thing that we don't sell. It would be too expensive to ship. It's almost as expensive to ship as it is to purchase because it's an awkward shape. So this is definitely something that I would recommend getting locally or at Amazon because it is amazing. All right, you can see I've got a little bit of interfacing left here. I'm just gonna go up to the edge of that because we only need to leave it in on one side only. So I'm just gonna go ahead and trim off this extra interfacing. We don't need it because we have covered everything that we need to cover. Your tab is gonna be the same way, but on this one, you're gonna have extra on both sides because both of them need to be folded over in this case. All right, so I've done videos on this a couple of times. What we're gonna do is we're gonna fold our edges into the center. So the first thing we're gonna do is fold everything in half, hot dog style, and press all the way down. Then we're going to take and we're gonna meet our sides in at that crease, and again, press all the way down. And then when we're done, what I like to do is fold it in and then fold it over and match those edges as I'm going down to give it a really good press. You're gonna do that for both the strap and the tab. Now, if you have a foot that has a guide on the side here, now's a great time to use that. It's gonna help you maintain a really even stitch length as you go down. Otherwise, you can just try to keep it as even as possible on your own. I'm gonna go ahead and up my stitch length to a 3.0 for this because we're just top stitching. It does hold it together, but it also is decorative. So a little bit bigger stitch width looks wonderful for that. When you're done with one side, make sure to flip it around and sew down the other. All right, so my first stitch was a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Now I'm gonna stitch an 1/8 of an inch away just to create an extra decorative element. This is optional, but it adds a fun touch. Now we're going to add the hardware to our bag. Now if you've gotten a kit from us, we've got everything included in there for you, but if not, make sure you refer to your pattern to know what pieces you do need and what size. I'm going to start with my tab. This one's really easy. We're just going to take our rectangle and we're going to put it in there. Now I do like there's a place where it's joined. I like to put that on the inside so you don't see it. You just see the nice full part here. And then we're going to stitch across the bottom a few times. If you have a side that you like better than another that you want to face forward, keep that in mind now. I'm going to have this one because this is a gradated fabric. So I want the lighter side of the fabric to be facing the strap once it's all assembled. One other thing to note is we're supposed to be stitching this within the seam allowance. That usually means an 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just setting my sewing machine up to sew the smallest stitch I can. And once I get all the way to the end, I'm going to do it again. That way we've gone over it a couple of times just to give it a really nice and secure join there. You also can reverse that as well. But I've gone over it 3 times now. That should be sufficient. I'm going to cut off my little thread tails and then we'll move on to the rest of the strap. One other thing we want to do before we call this done is we're also going to stitch across about 1 inch from the ring, going back and forth within those seam lines. And that's going to keep everything from sliding all around on you once we have this bag assembled. I'm kind of being a little arbitrary of where I place this. I know my foot is not going to want to travel over this hump, so I have it set so that my foot is completely to the side of where that is going to be. That way I don't have to compete with that and I'll get a nice even feed. I'm just going to completely turn it around. I'm going to stitch back and forth this way a couple times to get that good and secure. Last time. Now we're going to take our handle strap and we're going to take our edge that doesn't have any interfacing in it and we're going to slide this slide piece over it. And we want to make sure that we are going up and over that slide piece. You can see here, I've got it, you can see that bar underneath, but not from up top. Now I'm going to take this piece above and I'm going to fold it under about 1/2 inch and I'm going to fold it down again. Now where you ultimately end up placing this, you can have a little bit of wiggle room. You don't want too much room because we want it to be stitched fairly close to the edge here, but you certainly can move your slide up some. I think I'm going to try moving mine right where that interfacing starts. And that fold, it just naturally wants to fold there. All right, now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch across again, and we're going to see how far I can get. I may need to adjust this a little bit depending on how everything kind of sits underneath my presser foot. We'll wait and see. Just to give myself a little bit more room here, I am moving it over, that center needle over as far as I can. That way I can stitch down here and not worry about running into the hardware. I'm going to stitch in place a few times. It's going to take a lot of pressure, so I want it to be in there good. Okay, I think I'm actually going to move back to my center position here. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing I did on that tab, where I'm just going back and forth, and I've got that needle now in the center position. That way I can just keep fitting it with that tab on both sides, and I'm not running into it as I sew. All right, we're gonna go one more time, back the other way, and then we'll lock in place. All right, so now we're gonna take our other end and we're gonna put our swivel hook over that. Now we're gonna take and we're gonna loop through again to create our adjustable strap. All right, we've got our adjustable strap. Eventually it's gonna hook onto that loop there once it's attached, and we are done for now with that strap. All right, the first thing we're going to do for the actual bag portion of it is we're going to make our outside zippered pocket. I've got my piece B here. The first thing I want to do here is I want to fold it over and just find out where the half is. All right, I can see that crease there. I'm going to mark it just so you can see it better on camera. So once you've marked your center line, the instructions are going to tell you to move down a specific inch amount, and then you're going to draw a series of 3 lines. The measurements are given in the pattern. It's called the Central Park Sling. You can get it over on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. From there, you're going to find and mark the center of your piece, and then you're going to measure out a specified distance on both sides. Again, we don't give you the measurements. This is meant to be supplemental to use with the pattern. From there, what we're going to do is you're just going to draw a 45-degree line in. You can eyeball this. And this is going to be for cutting once we get our zipper placement lines in. So this is just basically going to be our guide of where we're going to be sewing next. Next, I want to take my pocket piece and I want to layer it right sides together. But the trick here is I have to make sure that I've got equal amounts on both sides of where this edge is going to be. So if I fold that back just temporarily to kind of see where I'm at, I can see that I've done a pretty good job of placing that in the center. I also don't want it to go all the way down to the bottom because I am going to eventually need to sew this together on the other side. So now that I'm happy with where everything is placed here, I'm going to go ahead and just put some pins in on the sides of where I'm going to be sewing to keep that in place where it's going to be sewed underneath the pocket. This is also a really good time to just flip it over and check and make sure that we have fabric up to and maybe extending beyond the pins a little bit. That's looking really good. I'm happy with that pocket placement. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch around the outside of this rectangle, and I'm switching back to just that regular stitch length. We are not top stitching at this point. I always like to not start at a corner. So I'll pick a side kind of close to the corner, but not on it to get going. And now I'm just going to follow along that line. All right, when you hit the corner, make sure you turn and keep following that rectangle around. All right, now I'm getting back to that point where I started. I want to sew over my stitching line a little bit and then just backstitch just to secure those threads. You can use a rotary cutter for this step. I like to just fold it over and use a really sharp pair of scissors. I use my micro tips for this. I'm just going to fold it back so that it's nice and straight. And to start with, I'm just going to give a little clip. That way, if I'm not perfectly on that line, it doesn't matter. But that gets me an opening, and I'm able to go ahead and cut on that line. I'm going to go up to that point, and then I want to clip out to those corners, but I do not want to go beyond where that stitching line is, or you're going to have frayed threads here. Then repeat going to the other side. Now it's okay to remove those pins, and now we're going to actually pull that pocket lining through to the wrong side of our outside pocket. So you can just flip it over, push it through the opening, and then pull that through. You can kind of see how this is working. We have a nice opening there for our zipper in a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do before I mess with that though is I'm going to press this down and in place. Now I really like to start by pressing from what's going to be the right side, because that's what's going to be obvious if we accidentally had the lining going too far in one direction. So I'm getting it lined up. I can kind of feel from underneath and give that a tug, make sure everything is nice and straight below. But that's looking pretty good for that bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a really good press. I don't like to use steam in my iron, but for situations like this, I will take my trusty spray mister and give that just a good dampening. And that'll help everything stay nice and folded in the direction I want it to be. And just keep working it until everything looks really nice and flat from the front, and then we'll check from the back too. Now the pattern tells you to use a little bit of steam to help keep this zipper in place. I have a hard time getting mine to work like that. So what I like to do is just hold it in place and go ahead and stitch around as I'm going. And I really want to just make sure that the zipper stays nice and center as we're going. Now, just like when we were sewing around, I don't like to start right in a corner. I like to start just a little bit in from that. I'm going to go ahead and pull that zipper pull out of the way, get everything nice and centered. And I'm just stitching as close to the edge as I can here. And this first pass is the most important, because that's where we're trying to get that zipper so that we're catching the zipper teeth and we're also keeping it nice and centered in the opening. All right, we've caught that zipper. So now we're going to stitch around the top here. And you can stitch over these zipper teeth. They're plastic. They just look like metal. Just go slow. All right, I'm going to preemptively move that zipper pull out of the way. All right, and back around to that original place. We're going to stitch a little bit beyond where we started, then we're going to back stitch. Now this is important. Before I get going, I want to make sure that I caught everything correctly here. And I can see everything looks great from the front. I stitched as close as I could with that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. But when I flip it over, I can see that there are 2 spots here where my zipper did not catch. So I'm going to want to go through one more time and stitch even closer and try to do that as evenly as I can. All right, I made it around the front and the back is looking a lot better. I've caught the zipper tape in all of that instance, so we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and trim this zipper tape so that it's going to be inside of where those pockets are going to be. Now we're going to go ahead and have these top and bottom edges meet, and I'm just going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam straight across the top. All right, now we're going to stitch down the sides of both of these pockets. Again, we're going to have that be free, so we'll actually take it to the sewing machine like this and just stitch those edges. I actually want this side to be the side that's facing out, so we need the pocket to be coming down here. So we're actually going to be having this be the bottom, so I need to be pinning down here. I am going to start by back stitching just to secure that really well. All right, now this entire pocket is going to get stitched to the front part of our bag. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to fold this right sides together so that the top and bottom are coming together. And then I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam going across just this one side. Again, I'm going to reinforce those seams as I get started and at the end. Next, we're going to turn this so that the right side is facing out. And I'm going to give this a really good press because it got pretty wrinkled during that step. Now I'm going to top stitch along this folded edge on above the zipper. All right, now the next step is going to be to add our pocket to the top of an A piece. We have two of these, one for the front and one for the back. So before I do that, this is going to be covering up one of them. So I want to decide which one is prettier, and that's this one. So I'm going to save this for the back, and we're going to place it here. So it actually will kind of look fun. It'll kind of look like it's coming out of there. I could also flip it too. I could see if it lines up a little bit better, and I think it does with this one. I think it looks a little less off. So I think we're going to have this be our up portion, and we'll be able to go from there. Make sure you refer to your pattern to know what size corners to cut out for our box corners later. And then also it tells you to place a mark a certain inch above those corners. So I've done that, and now I'm going to line up my piece so that my sewn edge is even with that bottom. And I'm going to clip these sides in place, and we're going to stitch all the way around within the seam allowance, which means 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I start a little bit above where that pocket's going to be, and I really reinforce these stitches. All right, our bag front is almost done. We've got that zippered pocket, which we can store all of our goodies in right here. And then we also have another pocket that we can just slide whatever in that doesn't need to be as secure. All right, it's time to add our handles, and then we're about ready to finish the bag outside. So what we're going to do first, we're going to take our tab and we're going to line it up. It'll tell you how far to make that mark. I just make the mark going all the way up because I can iron that away later with some fusible. And I'm just lining it up so that way my folded edge is on the outside. That's what the world sees. So that's the part I like to have facing the outside. And once I have that in place, I'm going to go ahead and just secure that with a clip. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just in this case, I set it up so that the outside fold is currently facing up. I should have thought ahead a little bit better on that, but it's too late now. So we're going to go ahead and put that even with the edge as well. And we're going to sew up 1 inch around here and down again as well. Remember, we've got to leave room for a zipper install later, so we don't want to go up too far. One really good way to hold this in place is just to take a couple of clips and put them on the sides of that handle on both of these. And that way, once we remove this so we can start sewing, it helps hold it in place a little bit better. All right, you're trying to follow your previous line of stitching when you do this. You want it to stay on top of it as much as you can so that it looks more professional in the end. All right, I've gone over that one time. I'm going to go over at least 2 more to really secure this. And now do everything you just did with the handle. All right, now we're going to take our top with the strap and we're going to arrange it right sides together with the piece that has the outside pocket and the zipper. At this point, everything is pretty thick, so I like to install everything with clips at this point. And then our back piece is going to get this strap. Now we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch stitch along both tops. Make sure you're back stitching to keep everything nice and secure. Now we're going to take our pieces and we're going to press this seam here so that it is going underneath the main body of the bag. While you're here, go ahead and remove that friction gel pen line. I'm going to do that with my back half as well, and then I'm going to top stitch along here. All right, the outside of our bag is shaping up quite nicely. All we have left to do is the lining. We've got a zippered pocket in there, and then we're going to be able to sew it together as we add the zippered top closure. So I installed a zipper pocket in the lining off camera. It is the exact same process as installing the zipper pocket in our outside of our bag, just it's going in the inside. So I didn't think you need to see that again. If you need to back it up, go ahead and do that. so you can watch that and review for this section. All right, now it's time to start installing our zipper that's going at the top. We're going to need our bag outside that has the tab and our lining that doesn't have anything on it. And of course we need our zipper. One thing I did to make this a little easier and not accidentally zip my zipper pull off is I stitched down the side of both of my zipper pulls. That way I can pull my zipper all the way to the edge and it won't come off in the bag assembly process. Now at this point you kind of have to ask yourself, do I want to see my zipper tape? Or do I want it to be hidden? Because if you want it to be hidden, then you want to use zipper foot, get as close to those zipper teeth as you can, and that way you will not see it when everything is turned out. But if you want it to show, and I do for this one because it goes very well with the purple that is in the butterflies and in my tab, you're going to want to just use your regular 1/4 inch foot. That way we're only going to eat up about 1/4 inch on either side of that zipper tape, and then this pretty purple becomes part of the design of the bag, which I want to have in this case. All right, so I'm going to pull that tab back, and I actually am going to give myself a little favor here. I'm going to unzip this and take one of my clips and clip that in place. That'll help keep that out of the way so it's not in the way when I'm putting my zipper together. So now we're going to take and we're going to place our zipper right sides together, and you want your zipper pull to be hanging off the edge. That way it's not going to get in the way of your presser foot when you're stitching. It'll just make it a lot easier. Now I always use clips for this step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clip just along the way, just one on the corner, one in the center, and then one at the other corner to get my zipper nice and aligned with the sides. All right, now we're going to take our lining and we're going to flip that right sides together and line it up again with the top, and I'm going to re-clip all of that, making sure all of my edges are even. Now we're going to stitch along this side, and again you either can use just your regular 1/4 inch stitch if you want that zipper to be part of the design, or a zipper foot going as close as you can to the zipper teeth if you just want to see the teeth and not the zipper tape. Now I am going to back stitch this because it's going to be a little stress on that seam as we get everything together. I don't want it to come apart, and I'm just opting for that 1/4 inch foot. Now we're going to press this so that both sides are turned under. I like to do that one side at a time. That way I know I'm good to go. I also like to use my trusty spray mixer at this step. I'm just going to give that fold a little bit of a press so I can go over it and have it hold in place really well. And then repeat on the main side. And you can iron over the plastic zipper. Don't like plop your iron down and leave it, but you can definitely put it on there for a little bit to get a good press. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do an 1/8 inch top stitch along the top of this. Now we're going to repeat those same steps, this time attaching it to the other side of the zipper. I start by pinning that strap out of place. Then we're going to line everything up, and this time we want to make sure that our edges are also even with the piece below. Now we're going to finish up by adding the lining. It should be right sides together with the lining we already attached to the zipper. All right, we're going to repeat first with a 1/4 inch stitch, then pressing, then an 1/8 inch top stitch. All right, now it's time to join our outsides and our lining and sew it all together in one big swoop. I'm going to go ahead and attach my handle here so that way I can kind of keep that all together and out of the way. The other thing I need to do is I need to pull this zipper pole to the center. If we sew it up and our zipper pole is still out here, we're not going to be able to use that zipper. It's not going to work. So it's got to be inside before we start sewing. All right, now we're going to take and we're going to start clipping these sides together so that way we can sew this up. All right, neatness counts at this point. So when you have places like this where the fabric is changing, you want to make sure that you have a clip there so that way it is nice and secure and doesn't move and everything lines up nicely as it's going around the edges. The other thing that you want to pay attention to is when you have these side seams here, we want to make sure that our zipper is facing toward the lining. For me, I've kind of got to pull my strap out of the way. It's getting in the way of that. But what I want to do is fold this back so that my zipper teeth are pointing toward that lining. All right, that's now folded back. I'm going to put a clip in and line up my lining here. And we're going to do that around the bottom and everywhere else and get this as good and secure as we can. All right, so when we stitch, you can start on one side and just go all the way up, going straight over that zipper, and make sure you're reinforcing your stitches when you're at the front and back. For the bag outside, we're going to stitch all the way across, and then we're going to go all the way down this side again. For the inside bag bottom, we're only going to stitch about 1 inch on either side, and make sure you really reinforce that because we're going to turn the entire bag right side out through that. We don't want to pop the stitches. It's a pain in the butt to have to reset those. So that's what we're going to do next, and just a 1/4 inch stitch around the whole thing. All right, I'm going to start with that bag bottom. I'm about 1 inch away from the edge, reinforcing that really well. And we're just going to stitch to the edge, reinforce again. Again, we're going to reinforce those stitches really well. And then sew the entire side. All right, and to the zipper, I'm going to go ahead and take that clip off because it's done the job of pushing everything down, so we're good there. Now I can sew across these zipper teeth. I'm going to go really slow as I do it. Now for this one, I'm going to keep it in place as long as possible, and I'm kind of holding it in place because I want those seams to be nice and tidy going around. Now here's where it gets a little challenging because I have the entire handle wrapped up in here. So you really just have to pay attention, make sure your edges are nice and even, because you don't want to go through all this and then realize you have an open seam somewhere on your bag outside. All right, now we're to the outside bag bottom. This is the one we're going to sew entirely across. All right, the rest is just a repeat. We're going to stitch down our side and then just 1 inch on that bag bottom lining. Now before we turn this right sides off, we want to trim the zipper pull or the zipper tape so that it's even with the edges of our bag. All right, we've got one last step and then we are ready to turn this bag right sides out. We have to box our corners so that we have finished edges and a 3-dimensional bag. I'm going to start by pulling this seam flat. And we want these seams to nest, which means we've got one going one way and one going the opposite way. And again, I like to clip these. And I like to do all of mine at once. That way my seams are all facing the same direction. So for example, right now I've got this bottom seam is facing to the left. So I want it to be facing to the left for this corner as well. So you kind of just start with one, you get one going one way, one going the other, and then you follow that all the way along. So now I can see I've got my seam is going to this direction. So I know when I come to the bottom that I need to keep it going in the same direction. All right, so now I'm going to stitch all of my box corners with a 1/4 inch seam. All right, it's time for our final step. We're going to put our hand through the opening that we left at the bottom. You might need to finagle a little bit to open that zipper a little further. And we're going to grab the end and we are very carefully going to pull it out through the opening. And you just want to take your time with this so that we don't rip that open. So you can stitch this lining closed by hand or by machine. I'm going to do it by my hand a little bit later, but we'll get everything out right side out for now so you can see how it turned out. I like to, by the way, stick my hand in while it's still at this point and really push out those corners as much as I can. I feel like I have better access to them and they end up looking sharper if I do that before I shove the lining all in. Now that turned out really, really cute. We've got our butterflies centered down the front. We have our nice little ombre on top. That zipper with the purple just really adds to it and helps pick up on the purple in the strap. And we've got a nice large inside. You can fit a good book in there along with many other things. We've got our second zipper pocket on the inside for things you want to keep more secure. And nice centered butterflies on the back as well. And let's not forget about our outside pocket we can slide things in, and another zipper on the outside, again for things you want to keep nice and put away. So I love this. I think it turned out so cool, so great. We're going to take a look at some of the other options that we have as well. I do not remember any of the names that I gave these, so we will just put them on the bottom so you guys can go find the corresponding kit for the one that you like. They're all from Tula Pink Daydreamer. Tula bags, they always sell out fast, so hurry up and grab those. All right, here are all the bags. Again, they are absolutely adorable. They are all in Tula Pink. They are just so, so fun. If you've got butterfly fans, if you've got bird fans, I know there are some. I know some people are following me on TikTok who also are big into birds. So this is your moment to get a bag that encompasses both of your loves. And it is so, so fun. I just love how these all turn out. They're nice and bright, fun, perfect for summer. I got mine together in about 3 hours of sewing time, probably another hour or two of cutting and pressing for the interfacing. So it's definitely something you can get together in an afternoon or a weekend and then go use it and have fun with it this summer. Again, the pattern is called the Central Park Sling, and it's from So Many Creations. We love working with Jessica Vandenberg to do tutorials for her patterns. They're always so great and easy to follow along with. And this video is just meant to be a supplement to that for you visual learners who need to like see it happening as opposed to just looking at the video or the picture in black and white. So make sure you grab a pattern, grab a kit if you want it. Tula sells out fast. They probably won't last very long, but they are absolutely gorgeous. So make sure you go check those out over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com.